Hey, so it's the 1st of October, so that means we have a new focus for our month, and this month it is paper clutter. Now, paper clutter can be really hard, it can be really overwhelming, and it feels like it's a bit never ending because there's always things being delivered to our homes, we get adverts for things, we get bills, we get bits of paper that have important information on them, we have all kinds of things coming through our door. So this is the month that we're going to try and get on top of that and build some habits and some routines that will work for the rest of the year, so that next year when we come to this point we can tweak it and think, is this working, how is this working? Of course, if you've already got to that point, then this is the perfect time to do that and look at how your treatment of paper coming through the door is working for you, and if you can make any improvements. So the very first thing to do is to decide from today that you will deal with paper that comes through the door as soon as it comes through the door. So for me, we have letterboxes in the UK. They're little slits in our doors. They don't let the air in or anything. They're covered, and the mail comes through and lands on the mat. For me, that's a bit of a problem because I have a puppy who likes to eat it, so I have to try and get to it before she does. But I pick that up and I deal with it straight away. I go through it and I sort it into whose mail it is, and I make sure that they see it that day. Then with anything that's mine to deal with, I will open it, look at it, decide if it's can just go straight into the recycling, or if it needs shredding, or whatever needs to happen with it, or if it's got an action attached to it, and then that's what, or if I can just file it, and then that's what I do with it. So I'll talk a bit more about how I do that in a minute, but that's kind of what I do every day as the mail comes through the door, so I don't end up with piles of unopened mail shouting at me from the countertop saying, look at me, you should feel really bad about yourself, which you shouldn't, because you know what, we're flying, we're learning, it's baby steps. Okay, so to be able to move on with the existing paper clutter, because if you start dealing with the stuff today, those piles won't get any bigger because you're dealing with it, you're being proactive. So you've stemmed what the piles are, how big the piles are, and you can start to work on them and see them going down. So you need a few tools for this. They're not expensive tools, you've probably got them laying around your house. You need a trash bag, you need a box or bin for shredding, you need a box or bin for filing, and you need a folder or some kind of something for to do. Okay, and then what you need to do once you've got those things, you need to grab a pile of paper and start going through it. So I would set your timer for 5 minutes, maybe grab an inch to start off with and start working on that. You may need to open things, obviously. So what goes into what pile? Recycling, that is anything that doesn't have your personal details on it. So flyers that come through the door, things like that that you can happily put out to be recycled and know that your identity can't get stolen. That is important in this day and age because identity theft is just terrifying. So make sure anything that goes into the recycling doesn't have your name and address on it. It's really easy because generally they're quite bright and they're addressed to the occupier, or they just don't even have an address on them at all. Shredding, anything that you don't want or need anymore that has your name and address details on it. Okay, so that goes in the shredding pile. Filing, you're not going to file yet, you're just putting it into, you're corralling it into a bin or a box. Okay, so anything that you need to keep, and I will talk about what you need to keep in a minute. And then the folder is for the to-do. So as you're going through, if you find a letter from the school where you have to fill a form in, or a bill that you have to pay, or something that you have to reply to, that goes in the to-do file, and the to-do file I deal with on a Wednesday. Any of those actionable items on a Wednesday, I sit down, I spend some time at my desk, and I deal with anything that's found its way into that folder. So to start off with, that might take you a little bit longer because you might have a backlog, but over time I can spend 1 or 2 15-minute sessions on a Wednesday, depending on obviously how much has come through the door. Sometimes it's a little bit busier, sometimes not so much. Just dealing with that, paying any bills, things like that, because I'm on top of it. That saves me money as well, because if we get a bill or something through and there's a discount for paying early, actually, you know what, I can take advantage of that discount because I've got it in my to-do file and I action it within a few days. Okay, so you're sitting down, you've got your bins and you've got your trash bag. You start with your pile and you just look at each thing and put it in one place. You don't need a fantastic filing system right now because we're just deciding what needs to be filed. So for me, what I need to file, and I know in America you have tax stuff that's different to over here, so you maybe need to get some advice from someone who's an expert in tax onto what you need to keep. And I'm going to talk about how you keep your tax papers later, because I have kind of quite a simple way to be able to do that at the end of every year. I have no idea how you gather it all together because I'm English and that's not how ours is different to yours, so I can't give you any advice on that, but I can tell you how to keep it at the end. Okay, so you go through and you think, okay, so that's shredding, that's recycling, that's filing, that's to do, and you just sort it, and that's all you're doing. You're just sorting it into the piles of where it needs to go. When the timer goes off, or you get to the bottom of your inch or your 2 inches or however much you've chosen to do, you take the recycling out and put it where your recycling goes. The shredding, you can shred then, which might be better because if you've got a lot of shredding, you're going to have a lot of shredding to do. That's if you build it up to the end, that then becomes a big overwhelming job as well. Or some people, I know a couple of my ladies have said, well, I've got so much. There are companies out there that will securely shred for you, and it's quite inexpensive. So it might be worth just finding out if at the end you could take a couple of large bins to sort of a company and they will shred it safely for you, and often they'll give you a certificate of destruction that means that if they haven't shredded it properly, I guess you've got some comeback if anything was to happen. So so that's an option. If you know that you've just got half a dozen sheets every time, then maybe just shred those as you go. And the filing just stays in filing for now. And obviously the to-do goes into the to-do for your desk time. And if you do that every day, if you just spend 5 minutes every day doing that, you will work through your piles of paper clutter. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. We're going to imagine that you've now been through all your piles and you've got to the point where actually your to-do file is working really well and all of that kind of thing, and you have to set up a filing system. So firstly, what do you need to keep? Well, for me, I always keep one copy of the latest utility bill. So I keep our water bill because if I ever need to prove my address and they want, say, my driving license and a utility bill, that I know I've always got one of those. Every other bill that we have, I now get electronically, and then I save those into a folder electronically because electronic clutter doesn't take up any space. So it's worth, in this process, when you have 15 minutes, turning as many things as you can. I've turned all my bank statements, credit card statements, all of those things that I use are paperless now, because it saves the environment, it saves me money, it saves the organisation's money, and actually I don't have that much paper to deal with, and it's there for me to look at. I know with my electricity company, I can go back in and look at bills from sort of 5 years ago if I really want to, if I had some need to. So go electronic with as much as you can. So I have a folder, and now I've just called it utilities because I have one come through the door. But you can have a folder for your various utilities. We have I have a personal folder for each of me and my children and my husband, so they're named sort of Emma, Martin, Emily, Robin, Anthony, they're named. I have a work folder for each of us, so anything that comes in, pay slips, any correspondence that we may get that's to do with our work, they go in there, and then we each have a vehicle file. So I used to very nicely name the file with the registration number of the car. Well, in the UK, you get a new car, you get a new registration number. So I would have to redo it, and then it would stay for ages. And then I realised one day that our names don't change. So my folder for my car is Emma's car. And so when I changed my car sort of 2 years ago. I was able to take out all the old paperwork for the old car that went away with that, and then put the new car paperwork in. And that works really well. Then you might need things like building guarantees. So I have a household file, I have instruction pamphlets. If a lot of them I now try and find online. If I can find them online, I will save them and then get rid of the pamphlet that I need the instructions for, because who needs that paper clutter? But there are some things that you just have to keep. So for those of you who have tax returns, when you send it all off at the end of whenever, February, I guess, March, for tax time to get it all sorted out, then when it comes back to you, I'm assuming it comes back in an envelope. You write the year on it and you drop it into your taxes section. Then, because you only have to keep 7 years worth. That's actually the same in England as well. We only have to keep 7 years out. So as you drop, so this year would be, I guess, 2016-17 in, you take 2015-16 out of the back and shred it. So each year, so you've got 7 envelopes or gaps for those things. And it works really well. It's a way of just keeping those things moving, so you don't end up, I remember having one lady who said she had 30 years of taxes stored in a closet, and what should she do with them? And obviously she didn't need all of that. There was, so that you don't want to get into that situation. So just to recap, 4 containers or a trash bag and 3 containers to go through, sort out, recycling, shredding, filing to do. Once you've sorted all of that out and you've been through it all, then you sort out a filing system at that point. Keep it simple. Complicated filing systems just become overwhelming to keep up with. And as you get to the point where you filed everything and it's all good, when you go to put a new one in, so when I get my water bill, which comes every 6 months, I drop the new one in and I take the old one out and shred it, because I don't need my water bills for anything other really than identification purposes. They're just telling me kind of what's on them, and I've checked them already to make sure they're correct, so there's no reason for me to keep them. And that's it. It's really simple. It can be overwhelming to get going on, and it can be a bit boring, but actually it's really simple. So if you are finding it kind of mind-numbingly boring to do, stick your favourite TV show on, Netflix, whatever you need to do. Listen to some music, set that timer and just work. I promise you it will bring you so much peace to have that paper under control. And the first time you need something, the first time someone says, have you got, and you can pull it out, that feeling of accomplishment will be just fantastic. I am going to sign off now because we are getting to almost 15 minutes, and that is a long one for me. I try and keep them as short as I can. We've got this. You can do this month. I know it's worth it. I promise you it's worth it. So go ahead and get started with that clutter. I'm really proud of you, and I know that it will make a big difference to you.